the research, I will share with you my preliminary research results. What is a mixed marriage or interracial marriage? A mixed marriage or interracial marriage is a relationship when two people with different backgrounds, cultures, religions, nationalities, and ethnicities enter into a loving relationship. Why did I choose to do a research about interracial marriages? Excuse me. On 5 August 2013, a song became a hot topic in Suriname. The title was Tin Kuya in and a Nieuwe Sundap, which means 10 cows and a new motorcycle. So the hot topic is in a negative sense. At one point, the song was not even allowed to play on the radio stations anymore due to its ethnic reasons and a lot of criticism from the Hindustani community who saw the lyrics of the song as an insult. The singer, Claude Dinger, alias Scrappy W, yes, W, through this song brought forward the story of an interracial relationship between a Hindustani girl and a bush Negro boy who had to deal with the opposition from the family. This is the link for the song on YouTube. The main question in my research is what challenges did Hindustanis face when entering into a relationship and marriages with other ethnic groups in Suriname in the period 1873 to the present. And the sub-questions are 1. What did the arrival of British Indians from 1873 as immigrants from India to Suriname look like? 2. Under what circumstances did mixed marriages among Hindustanis take place in the period 1873 to 1975? 3. What challenges and developments have these mixed marriages experienced after 1975 to the present? The research method. The research in this concerns both a quantitative and a qualitative study. Both methods were chosen because there is literature available regarding to mixed marriages and relationships in Suriname to be able to suffice with a quantitative study. The scarce literature regarding to mixed relationship and marriages is studied. Furthermore, information is obtained through interviews of mixed couples. By interviewing respondents, I was given the opportunity to find out their feelings and emotions regarding to mixed relationships. These oral stories are of great importance for this research. I have interviewed 6 men and 6 women living in Paramaribo, Wanica, and Comowena in the age category of 39 to 75 years. Research objective. This research aims to highlight marriages of Hindustanis with other ethnic groups and to investigate under what circumstances these marriages took place despite the challenges and what the lives of these mixed Hindustani couples are like. Social relevance. The subject of mixed marriages among the Hindustanis is underexposed in the historiography of Suriname. By writing this thesis, I want to fill in this gap. I want to promote integration, unity, love, and tolerance among the various ethnic groups in my country, Suriname. The information obtained can be used by students and other interested parties who want to conduct a similar study on mixed marriages in Suriname in the future. Between 1873 and 1916, a total of 3,000 34,000 Hindustanis came from India to Suriname to work on the plantations after the abolition of slavery. According to Mrs. Sitaram, recruiting men workers in India was difficult, but recruiting women was even more difficult. Various tactics were used to still get enough female workers, tactics such as deception and paying a higher premium for the women. She also states that during the entire contract period, far fewer women than men had arrived in Suriname. The male female ratio should have been around 40 women to 100 men. But this quota was never met and had caused a shortage of women with many far-reaching consequences with much violence. The shortage of women had um, also caused consequences for marriage. Not every Hindustani man could get a Hindustani woman as a partner. From Mrs. Sitaram's research, we learned that Hindustani men had various choices, such as calling their wives from India to Suriname, remaining single and unmarried, entering a homosexual relationship, or entering into a relationship with a woman of another ethnicity, an interethnic marriage. But the last one, so the interethnic marriage, was also not easy in that period. According to Chuni and Chuni, it was also difficult for most single Hindustani men to marry a woman from another ethnic group because for example many Creoles, mulattoes, and white looked down on the coolies, so the Hindustani. One of the reasons for this is that the Creole women who worked on the plantations earned more wages than the Hindustani men. They were therefore not attractive marriage candidate for, for such a woman. Another reason was that the contract workers often lived in isolation and had little contact with people from other ethnic groups. It was not only difficult for the men to enter into an interethnic marriage, it was also difficult for the Hindustani woman. In an official report, this statement was written. So far, the, the Indians rarely mix with other races. Only a fewer women are known to have taken men from the Negro race. On the other hand, it has not yet happened that Indians provided themselves with native women. In her research, Mrs. Sitaram mentions cases and figures to show that from 1891 onwards, there was a small change in the formation of interethnic relationships among Hindustani people. The overview shows that approximately 41 mixed marriages were entered into by Hindustani men and women in the period 1891 till 1916. However, there were also interethnic relationships where the partners lived together and did not legally marry. Entering into these marriages was a different matter and acceptance was another. While these unions were accepted for the men by the Hindustani community, women had who had an interethnic marriage or relationship were usually not accepted. Research results Hindustani mixed marriages in Suriname. I have conducted interviews with 6 married couples. For the sake of anonymity, I will not use their names here. In my thesis, I plan to use their initials. I plan to use I have chosen couples in which one of the partners is a full Hindustani and the other partner is a non-Hindustani. The respondents consist of 6 males, 3 of them who are Hindustani, 2 Creole, and 1 of Buru, so from white descent. Among the women, 3 of the 6 respondents are Hindustani, 2 Creole, and 1 Javanese. The couples have been married for between 20 and 40 years. 45 years. Variations in acceptance of Hindustani mixed relationship and marriages. The acceptance process of mixed relationship between Hindustani and other population group is often seen as tolerance by the Hindustani community. This acceptance process had different phases and variations. Tolerance means willingness to tolerate things that can cause annoyance. Variations that we encounter with regard to mixed marriages of Hindustani are acceptance without problems, acceptance with difficulty, and no acceptance. Canon, breakthrough rejection by a significant part of the family or friends. The perception of the on the other hand of ethnic groups with regard to the Hindustani community was that they were bossy, and dominant, stubborn, stingy, rude, materialistic, and very racist towards them. 2 female respondents of Hindustani origin said that they had even been thrown out of their homes by their families when they announced their intention to marry someone of a different ethnicity. The Hindustani men had to leave their paternal home in order to get married to their partners. Some of the respondents said that family, friends, and acquaintances had a lot of trouble with the ways of their partner. Sometimes the partner was bullied more often. On the other hand, some of the respondents said that they hadn't experienced open discrimination. 3 couples indicate that they had no contact with the family in the beginning, and some even say that they still have no contact with the family. The treatment of the children from mixed relationships was also an issue. The research showed that children were more often bullied because of their mixed ethnicity, because of their appearance, which differed from the Hindustani community or the family. The parents therefore chose to raise their children without any contact with the family. During the interview with the respondents, it became clear that in dealing with the in-laws, curiosity of crucial importance in interethnic Hindustani marriages. All the 12 respondents indicate that despite the opposition and discrimination from the family, they did not have any regret having an ethnic marriage. These 6 couples believe that a mixed marriage in 2024 will encounter fewer obstacles and will be more accepted than 20 or 40 years ago. Nowadays, Hindustani families are full of mixed Hindustani couples. Rejection can occur, but efforts are being made to improve context within the family via mobile phones, especially apps such as Facebook and WhatsApp helps a bit. Conclusion. The research shows that interracial marriages are not a strange phenomenon in Suriname. Before the arrival of the Hindustanis, interracial marriages were present in the Surinamese community. After the arrival of the British Indian immigrants in 1873, interracial marriages were also entered into with the other ethnic groups due to the lack of women. Mixed Hindustani couples were confronted with rejection and discrimination within their family. The most interesting part of my research concerned the interviews with the interracial Hindustani couples who, by means of questions, indicate from their own experience the challenges they had to face before contact was re-established with the family. Interracial Hindustani couples have come a long way in terms of acceptance of a mixed marriage within their direct environment. From the beginning, 1873, factors such as scarcity of women until the end of the large-scale agriculture in 1939 have caused Hindustanis to enter into mixed marriages with other ethnic groups, while they were rejected by their families. Over the years, this has changed on the other hand, but a mixed marriage within the Hindustani community remains a challenge for a long time. Because according to interracial couples interviewed, interviewed, Hindustanis are still expected to marry within their own group. These are the results of my research for now. And yes, my research still continues, and I want to thank everybody for their attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madhvi. We really appreciate you sharing your preliminary research, as you call it, with us.
Thank you, Miss Shalima.
You're welcome. Madhvi, how many languages do you speak?
I have I have my maternal. You know, Hindustanis here in Suriname, we speak Suriname Hindi. So I speak that very well. I can speak a little bit English. My English is not so good. I still try. And I have this and we speak Dutch. And I understand a little bit also Sralantongo. That's another language here in Suriname. So actually four. And I have also love for the Korean language. So that actually five. I don't speak it so well, but I can understand people.
So the only reason I really asked is because I wanted the audience to hear all the different languages that you speak, because you did an excellent job with your English presentation.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you
You're
so much.
welcome. So we
Thank
do
you.
have some questions for you, but what I'd like to do is I want to bring on Tanya now to comment on your presentation as the discusser. So I'll just introduce Tanya to the audience. She's well known to many people in this audience, but for the interest of the new persons, Tanya Sitaram is an historian, researcher, lecturer, writer, archivist, storyteller, and journalist. We go on. She's also the author of a book on Indian female indentured laborers and the co-author with Sanyu Hira of 10 volumes of Calcutta Indentureship Letters. Welcome, Ms. Sitaram.
Thank you, Shalima.
You're welcome.
Good day, everyone. Regarding to Madhvi's research, and Madhvi, really, you did an excellent job. Very good. In Madhvi's research on mixed marriages, one might generally think, why research that? Because it seems normal. But historically, it turns out that it was and still is not as normal as one might think. She already mentioned my research, but in my own research, where I have described the role, the life, and position of female indentured, I have noted some cases from which you can see that a mixed marriage of a Hindustani woman was not accepted, but of a Hindustani man was accepted. In one case, the woman gave birth to a Creole child and she had to leave the plantation, but the man could stay, but she had to leave with her child. There was a word, okay. There is another case where the daughter of a contract laborer married a Creole man and she wasn't accepted, not even in her Hindustani family and also not in the Creole family. Only years later, they reunited because of the grandchildren, mainly males. There are families still now that completely accept mixed relationships. But then there are also families that do not accept it at all. There is a fear of losing traditions and all. There are even jokes like, you couldn't find yourself a Hindustani man or a Hindustani woman? Hindustanis may have become so modern, but there are still many families that want you as a Hindustani to marry a Hindustani. Even if he beats the hell out of you, even if he beats you black and blue every day, he is a Hindustani, he's one of our own. And make no mistake, there are also families that pretend to have accepted mixed marriages and mixed relationships, But then what they do is they don't maintain contact after the marriage or make unacceptable remarks on them and their children, especially. In any case, these topics are also worth studying, just like Madhvi is doing. One should not be put off by saying, yes, there are not sufficient written sources to do this research, so we will not do that. For this purpose, it is good to apply the use of oral history as a research method, because by interviewing people, a researcher can obtain more and additional information about a certain subject, especially when it concerns a subaltern approach. And of course, oral history also has its advantages and disadvantages, but the researcher has to take that into account while doing the research. From my side.
Thank you very much, Tanya. I just want to ask Madhvi, and before I do, let me just let you all know I posted on the chat. If anyone has a question or a comment for Madhvi, please go ahead, raise your electronic hand. It's at the base of your screen. You can go ahead and touch on the reactions button and raise your electronic hand if you have a question. Madhvi, maybe I missed it, but in your research, did you, or rather in your presentation just now, did you state whether or not in those interracial marriages, it was between Hindustanis with Blacks, Javanese, Dutch? Could you please let us know?
Sorry, can you repeat the question? So, what is the question back?
I asked whether in your research or in your presentation, you
Yes.
mentioned whether the interracial marriages was between a Hindustani and what other ethnic group?
Yes.
Can you please
So-
identify for us, please? Yeah.
So these marriages were between a Hindustani, a full-blood Hindustani person, and another ethnic group like Creole, like Japanese. You have also Chinese. I heard from another person. There's also marriages between Chinese and Hindustani people and Japanese people. You have them also with the native people. So it's you have a lot of marriages. Actually, every race have gotten married to each other or they have relationships. I heard there are also Brazilians with Hindustani people. So it's now a common thing. It's not like it's still not allowed in in the community because if like me, I stay at Boiti. That means you're far away from the city. And in our community, it's a little bit strange if a Hindustani woman chooses to marry another ethnic group, you know. It's still not so accepted. But there are a lot of marriages. You have a lot of ethnicities here in Suriname, a lot. And because everything is now so modern, you can communicate through schools because it's not just there are schools only for Hindustani. That was back then. Now you have schools where you have all kind of people from different countries that decided to come to Suriname. So Hindustanis have they have a lot of interracial marriages over the years.
Thank you so much, Madhvi. Let's take a question from Mr. Evan Prasad from neighboring Guyana. Hi, Evan, please unmute.
I've pressed. Can you hear me
Yeah.
now?
Yes.
Yes. Very interesting topic. Seeing that I myself mixed person. I have Scottish ancestry as well. So any one of either Madhiji or Tanya ji can answer the question. What percentage of the Suriname population is considered mixed? Because in Guyana, it's about 20%. And we have had several of our presidents are either been mixed or been married, like President Jagan was married to a white American. President Granger is a person of mixed origin. President Donald Ramatar he's mixed with East Indian, African, and Amerindian. So we have had a lot of leaders in Guyana of mixed origins or were involved in mixed partnerships and so on. And here in Guyana, there's a lot of mixtures. I have one great aunt, well, she's now deceased, but her 6 children were all married to people of different origins. One was married to the first one to an Indian, the second one to a Chinese, one to an African from Colombia, one to someone from Panama who was more of Amerindian origin, and one of a Portuguese from Guyana. So you know, and all of these marriages took place within the 1970s, late 60s and 1970s. That's 50 years ago. So in Guyana, we have had a lot of these mixtures going all the way back. In fact, when the first Indians came here, there were only 14 women that came on the Whitby and the Hesperus, right? And of those 14 women, 13 were married. So there's only one unmarried woman who came for like 370 odd men who were not married. And therefore, you find in Berbice, the indentured men went into relationships with African women. So you had within by 1840 and 1841, the census of British Guyana was showing what we call Douglas, the first mixed Indians and Africans, way back in 1840, 41. So, you know.
Thank you. Let's take a response from Madhvi. Do you have the statistics?
So actually, I went to search for the statistics. Sorry, my language. Okay, I'm sorry. But I have come to know that here in Suriname, they haven't registered marriages on based of ethnicity. So there's no there's no data, available for us regarding to mixed marriages. You see it in the community, but it's not really written on paper. Or you have researchers that like Mrs. Sitaram that has done research where she can presentate, in a certain time period there was, like you could see that some of the Indians got married to native people in this country, but or another ethnic group. But when I went to research about it, I don't see data, available. I
What about
haven't seen.
what about on your birth certificates? Is your ethnicity mentioned on the birth certificates?
It is mentioned, but they didn't register marriages of ethnic groups on basis of like this is an interracial marriage or something.
So
It's just a marriage
a
between two
child
people.
born from an interracial marriage, how would that child's ethnicity be registered?
Mm, I don't know about that. Maybe Mrs. Sitaram can tell more about it. I think it's just about how you look, like what your mom is, if it's a Hindustani or a Creole or something else. Maybe Mrs. Sitaram can tell you more about that.
Okay,
I'm
thank
not
you.
so, I don't have very much information about that.
Okay, so let's
Yeah.
hear from Tanya.
No, on a birth certificate, there is no mention of your ethnicity. But just like Madhvi said, inter-ethnic marriages, they are not registered in that. Just like interrelation marriages, they're not pointed out to have, okay, we have so many Hindustani, so many and so many. Maybe they are statistics, but not that they are publishing it. So
I see.
but on the census, what they are doing is that they ask you to tick one of the ethnicities to which you think you belong. And if you say, okay, I am not I am a child of an inter-ethnic marriage, but I see myself as a Chinese rather than a Hindustani, then you put Chinese. And if you say, no, I'm a Dougla, then you put that you're a mix.
Right. So that category is indeed there. Douglas
Yes.
is indeed there.
There is, but it is not so much in percentage. You have the big one, the big group that are the Hindustanis and the Creoles. You have the Japanese, the Chinese, and then you have a lower percentage of the mix.
Right. Dr. Mahabir has a question.
Yes. So we really have to do some research on these mixed marriages. I agree. with Miss Ramuta that there is hardly any data available. But when we look at mixed people in Trinidad and Tobago, there are two categories. There's an official category called Dogla, and they are just 8% of the population. You have a mixed category in addition to the Dogla, and they're about 15%. The mix would be people who are not Doglas, and people usually of African descent who are fair skin or brown or red, right? So in Trinidad, we have these two categories. So Douglas should officially, in the census, should not be confused with mix. That's my point.
In Suriname, both are used, mixed and Douglas, as one, that they are children of inter-ethnic marriages. So we don't have that. We only have one. Mixed and Douglas, they are one group.
Okay. Thank you so much, Tanya, and thank you very much, Madhvi. We wish you all the best with your continued research. And we look
Thank
forward
you.
to hearing about it
Thank you,
soon.
Mr. Shalima.
You're welcome. So let's move on now to your the second presenter. This is Rachel Oliveira. Her thesis is titled Surinamese Women in Resistance, a descriptive study of forms of resistance from slavery to indentured labor, 1650 to 1939, focusing on African, Hindustani, and Javanese women. Welcome, Rachel.
Thank you very much. Hi everyone, good afternoon. My name is Rachel Oliveira. In June 2023, I graduated from EOL. Before I start, I will share my screen with you all.
I'm sorry for mispronouncing your name.
Yes. My thesis was about women in resistance, a descriptive study of forms of resistance from the slavery period to the period of indentured labor, 1650 to 1939. My goal was to tell the story of the African Surinamese women, the Hindustani women, and the Javanese women. These women had a voice and they knew how to use their voice. Our history speaks little about the women. Um, our history tells us more about the men who became heroes because they resisted the harsh punishments from the European masters. I believe that without the help of the women, a lot of things would not have been possible. Yes, I will start. I hope you all see my PowerPoint.
Yes, we are seeing your PowerPoint, but would you like to put it into full screen?
Full screen.
You have to go right somewhere there and put it into slideshow.
Yes.
Good. Very good.
Okay. Yes. Suriname experienced a turbulent period of slave labor during which there were at times clashes between the colonial government and the enslaved. For example, the first inhabitants of our country, the indigenous people, they were we call them in Dutch inheemsen, were used as slaves to work on the plantations. They have resisted the oppression by the Europeans. Subsequently, enslaved people were introduced from Africa. They are also known to have rebelled against the oppression by the colonial rulers and plantation owners. After the slavery period came that of indentured labor because the plantation economy of the colony Suriname needed laborers in order to be maintained. Uh, July 1st, 1863 was when the slavery was abolished. It was agreed that enslaved people would have to work on a plantation of their choice for another 10 years. This 10-year period was called the state supervision period. I have used many books for my research. One of the books I used was the book of Miss Sitaram. Sitaram indicates that the impending shortage of workers for the plantations after the period of the state supervision meant that alternatives had to be sought to bring people from elsewhere to work in Suriname. So they needed to look for other people to work on the plantations in order to keep the economy of the colony Suriname running. They made a lot of attempts to bring people to the colony Suriname to work on the plantations. In 1853, Portuguese and Chinese immigrants came to the colony Suriname to work on the plantations. In 1863, there also came people from the West Indies, such as Barbados and Madeira. However, all these attempts were failures. In the book of Sitaram, I also learned that the successes achieved by the immigration of British Indians in the neighboring British territories opened up opportunities for the planters in Suriname. The plantation colony of Suriname became the first United Nations with people from different parts of the world. My thesis is about resistance. But what does resistance actually means? Resistance, you have two forms of resistance, active resistance and passive resistance. Active resistance, for example, um, running away, fleeing away of the enslaved people from the plantations. They would return, avenge themselves, and take fellow sufferers with them. These runaway enslaved people were called Marons. Passive resistance, an example of passive resistance is when a house slave, among others, would poison the director of a plantation. The question I asked myself was, what was the role of the Afro-Surinamese, Hindustani, and Javanese women in resistance during the slavery period and the period of indentured labor in Suriname? The sub-questions were, what is the meaning of resistance? What forms of resistance are there? What led to the resistance of women? What were the consequences of the resistance by women? I will begin with the Afro-Surinamese women. In the Caribbean and in North and South America, slavery started around the mid-17th century and lasted for more than 2 centuries, 1650 to July 1st, 1863. During that period, 50 million Africans were imported and put to work on plantations in the three regions. About 300,000 Africans arrived in Suriname for this purpose. Suriname had a lot of fertile land, and these were used for many plantations. In the beginning, mainly sugar and tobacco plantations. The enslaved people were bought in West Africa. To arrive at the trading stations, they often had to make long journeys from the interior of Africa. The boat trip to the Americas took about 2 months and was a long and difficult journey with inhuman conditions on board. The enslaved people were chained and given little or no food. It often happened that slaves would jump off the ship. There's a saying, bury me in the ocean with my ancestors that jumped from the ships, because they knew death was better than bondage. This saying I got from the film Black Panther. At the coast, they were cleaned up by the agents from the WEC, the West Indies Company, or African traders in order to fetch a high price. They were, they were bathed, gray hair was dyed black, teeth were brushed, and the body was rubbed with oil so that the enslaved people would look muscular, strong, and healthy. When the enslaved people were sold, they were branded on their backs with the owner's initials. I have three pictures here. You see on the left, people with chains around their neck. The two other pictures gives you a picture of how it was on the ships with the enslaved people. Whenever they were sold to a new owner, they were again branded. You can see that on the picture on the left. This so that people knew all at all times who the enslaved person belonged to. A large number of slaves was taken to the plantations, their so-called new home, and a smaller part continued to work in Paramaribo. Enslaved women were assigned various domestic duties with wealthy white families. Hindustani women from eight Hindustani women. I already talked about the numerous attempts that were made to bring people to the plantations to the colony Suriname to work on the plantations. I talked about the successes um, achieved by the immigration of the British Indians into the neighboring British territories. In 1870, negotiations had therefore been conducted with Great Britain. It's called England now. These negotiations resulted in a so-called Coolie Traktat, the Coolie Contract, which stipulated sorry, I'm so sorry. The Coolie Contract, I will say it in my own words, it held a lot of rules for the Hindustani people and the Europeans. Um, Most of the times, the masters of the plantations they didn't work with the coolie contract. They just um they 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 didn't I'm sorry. They didn't ano ba that?
Work accordingly?
I'm sorry, what?
Work accordingly?
Yes, they didn't work accordingly the coolie tactat. Thank you very much. In 1873, the Lalaook, the first ship with British Indian contractors, but 390 Hindustanis to the colony Suriname on June 5th. The Lalaook had left India on February 26, 1873 with 410 immigrants on board. After a journey of 99 days, the ship arrived in Suriname with 279 men, 70 women, and 32 boys and 18 girls. So 11 people died during the journey to Suriname. The Javanese women. Another attempt to obtain workers for the plantations in Suriname was to bring workers from another Dutch colony, and that was Indonesia. Um, the Javanese people, they immigrants, came on August 9, 1890. They arrived in Suriname with the ship Jember that left Batavia, modern Jakarta, and came to Suriname via the Cape of the Good Hope. Here I had make a comparison based on arrival in the colony Suriname. I already talked about how they came to the colony, but there were many reasons why they came to Suriname. Something I forgot to tell you for the Afro Surinamese women. Um, the Portuguese had founded slave factories of the west coast of Africa. With the arrival of the West Indian Company, the Dutch, after conquest, gained control of the entire slave trade. So there was a trade going on between Europe, West Africa, and the Americas. From Europe, ship left with clothing and iron for West Africa. From West Africa, the ship left for the Americas loaded with enslaved people. From the Americas, the ship left for Europe with sugar, tobacco, and coffee, among others. The, this trade was a repeated trade. Um, as I said, there were many reasons why the Hindustani women and the Javanese women came to the colony Suriname. One of the reasons for both women was poverty. They were looking for poverty. The Hindustani women, some were unmarried and they were pregnant, and that brought shame to their families. Deception, um, the contract that they signed in their land had very attractive conditions, and that made that they decided to come to the colony Suriname. They also were misled, I think is the word, misled to come to Suriname. They were told stories of how the colony Suriname was a beautiful land where you would have your own ground and you would become rich and all sort of things. Comparison based on task and reward. All these three women had tasks they needed to do on the plantation. The women, the Afro-Surinamese women, needed to care for the sick. They needed to plant, harvest. Some women worked in the household of the plantation director. They also had the care of the children for them. All three women were seen as a sex object. The the men saw them just as meat they can have sex with all the time. Hindustani, Hindustani women worked 6 days a week for 9.5 hours. They needed to plant, harvest, do the housekeeping. Um, they needed to, they had the care of the children. Also, the Japanese women, their tasks were the same as the Hindustani women. Took care of the children, housekeeping, planting, and the Hindustani women and the Japanese women were also seen by the men as a sex object. The Surinamese women did not get paid for the task that they did, but the Hindustani women and the Japanese women received a payments. They received 40 cents for their hard work, what was really low in that time. What caused this discontentment of the women? Comparison based on dissatisfaction resulting in resistance. All three women had to work very hard on the plantation in the household of the plantation director. If they didn't do their task good, good in the eyes of the plantation director, they would get harsh punishment. Sorry. They also were seen as a sex object. And for the Hindustani women, why and the Japanese women, why they were um dissatisfied is that because of the low salary they got. Uh, this dissatisfaction result in resistance, and um, a form of resistance from the Afro-Surinamese women was suicide and passing on information. They would kill themselves, and it was not good for the plantation because women they um they carried the children, and so you have more. They would have more enslaved people on a plantation. Passing on information. All three women did this because some of them worked in the household of the the plantation, and they would hear some stuff and they would pass it on to their fellows people. Uh, Two women that stood out were the Afro-Surinamese woman was Mapansa. She from West Africa. She put rice. How do you say it? Yeah, Mapansa was an Afro-Surinamese woman who came to the colony Suriname. She came with rice grains in her hair to the colony so that they could plant the rice here in Suriname. Another woman who stood out was Yani Titari. She was a Hindustani woman who came to the colony Suriname as a 24-year-old young mother in 1880. She worked on the plantation Sarhan Hope in the district Camarena. Yani Titari was a great example of how women use their voice. She resisted against the harsh punishments from the Europeans. She has stood up for both women and men. On September 26, 1884, she was shot in the head after she and many immigrants took part of a rebellion led by the immigrants themselves. They resisted because they were dissatisfied with, among other things, the work they had to do, the fact that women were seen as a sex object, and the fact that they received harsh punishment from the plantation director. I don't have an example, a woman that stood out, a Japanese woman that stood out. I didn't find any in our history books in my research.
Mhm.
Comparison based on punishment. All three women received bush wiping. So there, some women, the Afro-Surinamese women were chained to heavy objects. I have two pictures here. Um, Hindustani women and Japanese women could get jail sentences if they did something wrong. Conclusions. Since the slavery period, women have made their voices heard to resistance. The role of women in resistance from the slavery period to the period of indentured labor has been described in little or no detail. They fought hard, side by side with men against poor treatment. Some women who have become well known for their resistance are the enslaved woman, Mapansa, and the Hindustani female immigrant Gyani Titari, and Gulab. I didn't talk about Gulab. She was also a Hindustani woman who came from India. She had resisted and she um she didn't come to the colony Suriname because she was like, no, I they have misled me, and she showed them that she had a voice, and at the end they told her she could go back to India with her family, to her family. um these are some of the women that I came across in my research. The second conclusion, Afro-Surinamese women, Hindustani women, and Japanese women severely protested and resisted poor treatment, arduous work, severe punishments, and being used as sex objects. Afro-Surinamese women either committed suicide or fled the plantations. Some forms of resistance used by Hindustani women include rebellion, refusal to work, strikes, and swearing in their own languages. In their own language. The Japanese women also resisted to hard work. Their form of resistance consisted of attacks on supervisors or directors, refusal to work, strikes, riots, and passing on information. All three different women received punishment for resisting the conditions on the plantations. Afro-Surinamese women's punishment include wiping, a chain, shackle, and the death penalty. Hindustani women received a fine and or prison sentence with or without forced labor, and they were withheld wages. If the Japanese women did not adhere to the agreements made, they could be persecuted. Thank you for
Right.
your attention. That was my
Thank you.
presentation.
Thank you very much, Raquel. We did go over a little bit in terms of time. So I would ask Tanya if you could just please give us a few comments very quickly. Thanks.
Thank you. Rachel's research shows that Suriname and its several ethnic groups are not an island. We must also be able to place things side by side for comparative research. She has examined the resistance, activities, and participation of Creole women, Hindustani women, and Japanese women side by side, the similarities and the differences between these three big groups. Women have made very important contributions and played, and still playing, an important role in the history of Suriname and actually in every other country. Women have also played an important role in the resistance activities as providers of information, caring for the wounded after an uprising, and giving advice. Rachel has used literary works and archives. In this case, no oral sources because the target group had already preceded us, but their actions are recorded in other documents and sources. Their lives were also so similar that the actions were also similar. They were not only present on the plantations, but also in the domestic sphere of the plantation authorities. That made them obtain more information than men. No exceptions were made to hand out punishments, so women were also punished just as harshly in the cruelest forms as male workers.
Thank you very much, Tanya. Rehana, you have your hand up. Let's take your question very, very quickly, please. Thanks. Can you unmute? Sorry, one more time. Good.
Hear me now? Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Yes.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, I just wanted to make a notice that Sarah was enslaved and she flee from the plantation, and that's when she flee from the plantation with her husband, and that's why she's called a Maroon. And she had, just like you said, a seed in her hair, and she took it from there, and that's how the Maroons know how to plant rice. And she took it with her in the woods, and they started a life there. And the other one, the tree, yeah, you just got a little bit confused, I think, because Zorg and Hope is in the city, and Komijn is, of course, at the opposite of Paramaribo. And but it was very nice, Rochelle, what you all told us about. It's very good that you shared with us to all the women. Thank you.
All right. Thanks very much. Tanya, were you able to hear Rehana?
Yes, Rihanna. Thank you for the
Hi,
remark.
Tanya.
But people also they get confused with the name Zorg and Hope. There are two Zorg
Yeah.
and Hopes. One a plantation Zorg and Hope in Komijn, and the
Yeah.
other one is the region Zorg and Hope in Paramaribo. So
Mhm.
there were two.
That's true. That's true. Absolutely.
Good. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
I want to move on now to our next presenter very quickly. And this is Margaret Danso. Margaret researched the disappearance of the Taja or Hussein Muharram tradition in Suriname, and we just came out of the Muharram period from 1873 to 1987, a practice observed mainly by Shia Muslims as a dramatic reenactment of the Battle of Karbala in Iraq in 680 AD. Welcome, Margaret. You can go ahead with your presentation.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for the introduction, Mrs. Shalima. As you have heard, I am a history teacher and I have studied history at the Teachers Institute. And for my graduation, I conducted research on the disappeared Tara tradition in Suriname from 1873 to 1987. This tradition was celebrated extensively in Suriname during the immigration period, but has gradually faded away. I encountered theirs during the contract period, as that was my initial topic. It caught my attention because I had never heard of it before, and I was curious to learn more about it, which led me to delve deeper into the subject. The goal of my research was to raise awareness about the Taya. Sometimes people have heard about the term but don't know what it exactly meant, what it's exactly celebrated or commemorated. Especially for Suriname, where various ethnic groups are living together, it is important to learn about its history and its significance. each other's religion, culture, and yeah. My approach for the research was from the perspective that this tradition is a part of Suriname's religious heritage and not just that of the Muslims alone. I also noticed that many people, including Muslims, are unaware of what the Taja entails. Hence, I decided to dedicate my graduation research to this topic for greater awareness. To gather information, I conducted literature research. I used newspaper articles and websites. I also interviewed individuals from the Muslim community, and I researched archives. The main question of my research was what factors have led to the once well-known Tada celebration to no longer being observed since 1987. And to support my main questions of to give answer, I had some sub questions. The first one was, what is the Taja in general? So what is the origin? What did the celebration and experience look like in Suriname from 1873 to 1987? What measures had the Dutch authority taken to prevent incidents and disturbance during the immigration period and during the Taja celebration? And a short note on how Taja is celebrated in other countries in the Caribbean, such as Guyana, Trinidad, and Jamaica. Indian Indentureship started in Suriname in 1873. The first ship Lalaruk brought the first 399 immigrants from British India to Suriname. The last ship Dewa came in 1916. In total, there were 64 transport and a total of 34,000 British Indians brought in. There were Hindus as well as Muslims and Christians who came to work in Suriname. The Hindus were a larger group, about 82%, and there were 17.5% Muslims. All these groups came with their own tradition. But what is the origin of the Taja? As you all know, the origin of the Taja lie in a political conflict from the early history of Islam in the Middle East regarding the succession of the Islamic leadership caliphate. Two potential successors, Hassan and Hussein, both grandsons of Prophet Muhammad, were murdered. The Taja is a mourning festival celebrated by Shia Muslims to commemorate the death of Hassan and Hussein. The urge of power made the opponent, Muawiyah, who was being appointed governor of Damascus by the third caliph, murdered the two brothers, Hassan and Hussein. And from there, all the misery began. He not only murdered Hassan and Hussein, but also many others who came in his way. Hassan was killed in 670 as a precaution. He was poisoned in Medina. He was poisoned in Medina. Muawiyah also wanted power for his son Yazid, who was very into corruption, bribery, and the use of violence. On the 10th of Muharram, also known as the day of Ashura, a bloody battle took place between Hussein and Yazid's army. However, Yazid prevailed because his army was much larger than that of Hussein's. After all of Hussein's troops were defeated, he was beheaded. His this incident is also known as the Battle of Karbala, and Karbala is in Iraq. After Hussein's death, his head was taken to be exhibited to his followers. Later, it was brought back to Karbala and buried with the rest of his body. In the early 9th century, a tomb was built to commemorate Hussein. Unfortunately, it was destroyed under the supervision of Caliph al-Mutawakkil, and pilgrimage to Karbala in honor of Hussein were also prohibited. In the 10th century, a tomb was again built on the site by order of Emperor Dula. The Taja mourning festival was first held in the year 1009 in Persia, the present-day Iran. During the festival, people wore mourning clothes and black clothes were hung on shops and markets. For Emperor Timur, this was not enough to commemorate the death of Hussein and his brother Hassan, so he had a replica of Hussein's tomb made, which is known as the Taja. Various tajas were displayed representing the tomb. In some cases, horses were placed on either side of the Taja as a symbol of the horse with which Imam Hussein bravely fought. The thirst suffered by Hussein and his army due to the blockade of the Euphrates water supply by Yazid's troop is symbolized by offering of water to the barrier of the Taja or buried the Taja in a moist place. This tradition spread very quickly, reaching India and eventually being brought to Suriname by Shiite immigrants. The Taja festival or Muharram was beside Holi one of the most famous festival among the immigrants in Suriname. The Taja festival, which took place on either July or between November and December, lasted for 8 days. It involved prayers and songs of mourning for the deaths of Hassan and Hussein. Not only the Shiite Muslim, but also Hindus, Christian, and other faiths were celebrating Taja. In Suriname, each community of the various plantations built their own Tajas. These were made of bamboo, colored paper, tencel paper, mirrors, etc. According to Dr. Hassan Khan, a well-known historian in Suriname, the building of the various tajas was given a competitive element to see who could build the largest and most beautiful taja. On the last day of the Taja festival, the Tajas were carried to the designated place and buried there. In Suriname, the Tajas were also built from bamboo and decorated with mirrors, color for kite paper, tencel paper, color for flags, and other materials. In some cases, the tajas were also decorated with cases, the tajas were even built by people other than Muslims, such as Hindus, Christian, Chinese people, Criollos, or Portuguese. Muharram in Suriname was accompanied by fasting, making offerings, and much prayer towards the day of Ashura. The day of Ashura was the most important day in this ceremony because then the processions took place and the tajas were carried to the water. There was dancing, delicious food, songs of lamentations were sung, sticks fight took place, and wrestling performances were also performed. Afterwards, the taja was entrusted to the river. The tajas were even so large that it had to be carried by 50 to 60 men. In an interview with Dr. Hassan Khan, he indicated that Taja is a kind of a small house with something of joy. And when people walked along the roads with such Taja burial in Lucknow, the researcher Gulam Wahid also confirmed that Taja is a kind of a small house with something of joys on top. People would walk around with such a Taja. These tajas were made out of joy, and when people walked along the roads with such tajas, sour water or syrup were placed there for passersby to enjoy. Later, it turned out that celebrating Taja is sinful. It should never have taken place. According to Muslims, Taja is therefore haram. You cannot have fun or have company knowing that your referred prophet's grandson were killed on that day. End quote. Unlike Mrs. Ashraf, the 61-year-old Mr. Basdeo, because I interviewed like 3 persons, he had another point of view. He experienced Taja celebration 3 times, and he did it since he was 18. And he indicated that Taja was a sacrificial festival of the Muslim in which everyone could participate. As a Hindu, he himself enjoyed this Taja celebration. According to Mr. Basdeo, design and building the Tajas took at least a whole week, and on the last day of the Taja, they were immersed in the water. In an interview with Dr. Hassan Khan, he indicated that during his visit to Barwaripur, a village in Uttar Pradesh in 2006, he was shown that the Tajas were also buried. The burial of the Tajas took place at a designated location along the river. When he visited again in 2010, he witnessed such a Tada burial in Lucknow. The researcher Gulam Wahid also confirmed that Tajas were buried in a special place, namely the Taja Cemetery, where each Taja had its own grave. In Suriname, Tajas were not buried, and the reason for this is because in Suriname we have naturally running water. According to Wahid, making a Taja required knowledge of how to do it. The skills for building Tajas were passed down from generation to generation. Taja makers had a special place or building where they made these structures. The place had to be ritually purified pure and holy and was called a imambara or ashurkana. Devotees would visit such a place or building to pray for the first 10 days of Muharram. Certain people believe that once a person started building tajas, he could not stop. If such a person for some reason chose to stop building taja, it could mean to that there were dire consequences associated with this decision, such as death in the family or poverty. The Taj festival brought many indentured laborers together. For many of these immigrants, it was an opportunity to stay outside of the plantation, something that was normally not easy because a pass was needed to leave the plantations. The Muharram celebration played an important role in the awareness of the local identity of the Hindustanis. It gave them the opportunity to break away from the despair subordinate position, frustration, and hard work on the plantations. Hassan Khan indicates that songs about martyrdom and hidden resistance. It gave them the opportunity to break away from the despair. Subordi- It was one of the ways in which the contract workers resisted the indentured labor. During Muharram, they showed their power in a subtle way. Hassan Khan also indicates that songs about martyrdom and Hassan of Hassan and Hussein can be seen as protest songs against oppression. According to Mrs. Sitaram, although the Taj festival was a Muslim festival, it was celebrated by Hindus and other ethnic groups just like Holy Pagwa. During the Taj festival, the Tata drum was indispensable, and people also sang songs and danced. The woman who especially participated in this part offered love, and also put money in the Taja and other sweets, and also put money in the Taja while making a wish. Jara songs were also performed along with the Jara dance, where dancers hold brooms made of fibers, move in circles, singing while hitting each other with their brooms and to give it a certain rhythm. However, according to Mr. Sitaram, the Taja festival led to fights among the immigrants. The Taja celebration did not always proceed peacefully. Here and there were few incidents. According to Hassan Khan, this festival was anxiously anticipated by colonial authorities and plantation owners. The reason for this was that Muharram was often associated with violence in most cases. And I will mention a few incidents. On August the 6th, 1891, an incident during the Tada celebration on the Sulan and Khirterdin Barra plantation took place. While carrying the Tajas around, the immigrants from these two plantations came face to face and no one wanted to move out of each other's way. After which a conflict arose. Nine people were injured and more were beaten up. Vandalism also took place. Following this incident, an investigation was started by the commissioner of Banidan Comovena. He went with a detachment of police officers. When they took along some immigrants, there was much shouting and confrontation. commotion because the rest of the immigrants didn't want their maids to be taken away. When they took along, the immigrants attacked the police officers and the authorities with sticks and clubs. The police tried to hold back the crowd, but they threw pieces of food, burned clay, and other hot objects at the police. In this defense, the police fired, and another 9 people were hit, of which 3 died instantly and 2 died within a few minutes. This offense led to request the governor to strengthen and to amend and supplement the penal code so that target punishment and measures could be taken during such situations. This request resulted in a circular, and the request was made to take the necessary measures and not to let the Taja celebrators leave the plantations except where the Taja were built. Another incident took place in 1927. During the Taja ceremony, the 43-year-old police officer Emilius Theodorus Volkert was killed. Abdul Magid, alias Bardia, started beating the drum at one point. When Officer Volkert asked him to stop, he said, "This is the coolie god. Whites also have their guards. Coolies also have their guards. I am not afraid of the police." After which Abdul fatally stabbed him in the neck. Volkers died immediately. The in 87 in the district of Nikeri. There are various reasons for this end. First of the religious character of the Taja disappeared. The excessive use of incidents, and what Mrs. Ashraf indicated, that the Taja decision, or let me say, the decision to stop the Taja ceremony came from the Islamic scholarship from Saudi Arabia and made it known that it is a sin to celebrate Taja. Taja is also written down in the is what Mr. Ashraf said. Hindustani immigrants did not only came to Suriname but also to other countries to work on the plantation and experience of Taja in other countries in the Caribbean, such as Trinidad is the only country in the Caribbean where Taja is still celebrated. It's not celebrated anymore in Guyana. The last was in 1917, and in Jamaica, a carnival-like ceremony. Also, there are different names for Taja in these countries, or Muharram. Just like in Suriname, fights also broke out during the Taja celebration. The colonial authorities could not ban the Taja because the immigrants had the right to celebrate. I also want to conclude my very educational on the one hand and challenging on the other about this one celebrated tradition in outsider to the Muslim community. It was an introduction to one to which I belong. As a Creole woman who professes Christianity, which I experienced as pleasant. And it was challenging because it hasn't been celebrated for years and not really talked about, and not many written sources to be found. Information was obtained that allowed me to create an image of the Taja in the past in Suriname. And
Okay, Margaret. So very interesting. And let me extend an invitation to you. Trinidad and Tobago would welcome you at our next Hussein celebration, which should be somewhere in the middle of July or early July to the mid July of next year. So we just came out of Muharram. You need to mark your calendar for when Muharram is going to take place. And I'm so glad to hear that Professor Hassan Khan was assisting you with this research. and that you were able to speak to him about his own family's experience with this. I want to take the opportunity now to wish a member of his family a very, very happy birthday. So Professor Hassan Khan's brother, whose name is very long, let me just get it right. I don't want to mix this up. Richard Mohammed Ibrahim Hassan Khan is 86 years old today, and that's why your professor and our living legend is not with us right now, because he's there at a Quran Tilawat with his brother and his family. So happy birthday to you, sir, and all our best wishes to the Hassan Khan family. So again, coming back to your research now, Margaret, very interesting. I see a raised hand, but before we go to Evan, Tanya, what would you like to say?
I've written something about Margaret's research that shows that religion also matters, not just the many wars in history and the powers of other countries. As she herself said, it is necessary to highlight religious matters because even members of the community being researched sometimes do not even know that such a festivity existed and what it all entails. And sorry, yes. And if we wait until a member of a specific community does the research themselves and not others, then it is possible that the information that is available now will not be longer available then. People
All
often
right.
have the information and the experiences, the stories in their heads as memories. And when those people pass away, they die, then first-hand information is also gone. And I want to tell you this, a long time ago, I spoke to, I will not take his name, to a very influential person from the Muslim community. And he said to me that he really wants to organize a taja again in Suriname. We would investigate some things and then we will work it out in the future. But then after a time, a long time, I spoke to the person again and he was completely opposed to the organizing a taja in Suriname again, because he told me also what Margaret told, that it is a sin and it is actually a mourning ceremony that should not be celebrated. But I talked to another person of the Muslim community and he would really like to organize a taja in the historical sense again. But logistics, organization, money, these are some significant factors that make it impossible at the moment now. And just like Taja, there are also other religious festivals which the British Indian immigrants brought with them from India to Suriname and which are not investigated yet. Some we don't even know, they are not celebrated anymore. So we can do more research on those topics also, besides the wars and all the other things. In the Coolie Treaty that was concluded in 1870 between the Netherlands and England, it was stated that the Hindus were granted 32 religious holidays and the Muslims 16 to celebrate their religious festivals. So they are more festivals. Margaret also used oral sources, and fortunately, as an outsider, like she is saying it, she was able to get her way through and the information from the respondents. So that is a very good thing. Thank you.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you. Now that we are in connection with Margaret, liaise with Tanya and you all can remind us. We will send you the information for Mr. Jamil Bisna,
Okay.
who sometimes lectures on Hussein and Taja building in Trinidad and Tobago in St. James. He sometimes lectures at UV. And we will connect you with him because he and his family run what is known as a yard, a Tazia yard in St. James, where in Trinidad and Tobago, that's where you go to see Hussein now. There are several yards, all close proximity to each other. Margaret, you're quite welcome to come and to experience that and the building and the procession and everything. And we will also connect you with Professor Syed Ijaz Hussain from Shantiniketan in India. His family, he's actually Shia, and there is a whole Hussein tradition. He himself is a master in explaining everything that happened in Karbala as well as in India and so on. So please just give us a reminder.
Thank you. We will be.
Great. So let's take a question for you from Eva now. Go ahead, please.
Yes, a quite interesting topic, Taja. That particular form of celebration was suppressed in British Guyana by the colonial authorities before the First World War, because the celebration had been taken over by the Africans and the Hindus, because the Shiites were such a small percentage of the already small Muslim proportion of the Indian population that yearly it had become almost a non-Muslim celebration. And it was an occasion for lots of rum drinking, and drunkenness and raucousness and fighting. And and in Babis, they would take the Taja to the Kanji Bridge and dump it into the Kanji Creek. And the British decided to put an end to it. And it has never been resuscitated in Guyana.
Margaret, any response?
Actually, when I did my research about the Taja in Guyana, that is what I found out. And I don't know if he will agree with me, but in my research, I read that there was some discrimination there when the Afro people in Guyana started with their own tajas. So the Shia Muslims didn't want them to build their own taja, have their own taja festivals, because they said it's something of the Hindustanis, something of the Shias. They don't know nothing about it, so they shouldn't proceed with their Taja festivals. That's what I found in my research.
Well, that's very interesting. We would love you to come and see whether in Trinidad and Tobago that might have been one of the reasons why it also became, well, not outlawed now, but there was the 1884 Hussein massacre in Trinidad. That was along similar lines. So you need to do some further research, and we really look forward to hearing your conclusions.
Sure, my pleasure.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. So we are at 4:57 and unfortunately time to wrap up. So at this point in time, I want to say thank you very much to all our presenters today. Well done. Thank you very much as well to our discussant, your organizer, Ms. Tanya Sitaram. And thank you so much to the members of the audience. Before we close, we want to recognize our very, very well, a dear friend of Dr. Mahavir's and his mentor. He said it was his mentor, but this person was also my mentor. He was a school teacher of mine. And this is none other than Mr. Kamal Prasad. He was a history teacher, a writer, and researcher. According to Dr. Mahavir, it is Kamal Prasad who opened our eyes to see how Indo-Trinidadians were marginal or marginalized in the mainstream media and in formal discourses and in public groups, organizations, and institutions. He was an inspiration to many of us. Unfortunately, he passed away a few days ago, and his funeral took place on Saturday. So he is a tremendous loss to us, and we wanted to make sure that we recognized him. So in closing, we would like to play a song in his memory, and it's something that he might have enjoyed, and we hope that you all will enjoy as well. It's a song on friendship. Chahunga Mai Tujhe. This is from the movie Dosti. That's Mahabil.
चाहूंगा मैं तुझे साँझ सवेरे, फिर भी कभी अब नाम को तेरे आवाज मैं न दूंगा, आवाज मैं न दूंगा। चाहूंगा मैं तुझे साँझ सवेरे, फिर भी कभी अब नाम को तेरे आवाज मैं न दूंगा, आवाज मैं न दूंगा। चाहूंगा मैं तुझे साँझ सवेरे। देख मुझे सब है पता, सुनता है तू मन की सदा। देख मुझे सब है पता, सुनता है तू मन की सदा। मितवा मेरे यार तुझको बार बार आवाज मैं न दूंगा, आवाज मैं न दूंगा। चाहूंगा मैं तुझे साँझ सवेरे, फिर भी कभी अब नाम को तेरे आवाज मैं न दूंगा, आवाज मैं न दूंगा। चाहूंगा मैं तुझे साँझ सवेरे। दर्द भी तू, चैन भी तू, दर्स भी तू, नैन भी तू। दर्द भी तू, चैन भी तू, दर्स भी तू, नैन भी तू। मितवा मेरे यार तुझको बार बार आवाज मैं न दूंगा, आवाज मैं न दूंगा। चाहूंगा मैं तुझे साँझ सवेरे, फिर भी कभी अब नाम को तेरे आवाज मैं न दूंगा, आवाज मैं न दूंगा, आवाज मैं न दूंगा, आवाज मैं न दूंगा।
There you have it. Shakir, take over, please.
Okay. Thank you, Shaloma, and thank you all for taking the time to attend and participate. As we've said earlier, this public meeting is being hosted by the Indo-Caribbean Cultural Center, and today we are pleased to partner with the Amina Ghafoor Institute for the Study of Indentureship and its Legacies, led by Professor David Davidine. And you can feel free to contact the ICC to publish your books. Remember that we are asking you to kindly give us your suggestions. And if you give a donation, your name will be placed on our poster and all promotional materials. And you can contact Dr. Mahabir for details. Our topic next Sunday will be conversations, photos, and videos of our ICC tour of Grenada, from where we will be broadcasting. So we want to thank our advisory and planning team led by Dr. Kumar Mahabir, to Daryl Gransham and Navin Mangal, to Ravin Ramsingh and Miriam Mohammed. So please visit, like, and subscribe to our YouTube channel to see all our past recordings. I am Shakira Mohammed from Trinidad and Tobago,